Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the next episode of our adult Sabbath School lesson. We're going to talk a little bit about covenants, marriages, and relationships in Genesis. My name is Monique, and I'm joined here with Pastor Sasha and Misha. So I guess my first question isn't really a question, but more so a comment, because it's really almost funny to read about the marriages of Genesis because it's a comedy. Like, these are sitcoms. And like, my favorite one is of Abraham and Sarah, where she like laughs inside the tent and the angel of God asks Abram, like, why did she laugh? And he's like, no, I didn't. And then he's like, no, yes, but you did. Yes, you did. Like, I can hear the audience like laughing. Like, that's just, it's hilarious to me how that happened. But after reading it again and again and again, I understand that God kind of had to create that distinction for Abraham and kind of call her out to not be somebody to trust. Because over and over again, Sarah gave Abraham bad advice. And so he had to be there and be like, why'd she do that? Because I don't think Abraham heard her laugh, but God did. And he had to point that out to make it clear to him that she's not to be trusted, not in a bad way, but like God primarily is to be trusted. So how can we use these many examples of these, your classic couples, your marriages, your household common occurrences as an example of, God showing us what we really need to be paying attention to?
That's since you are in the story of Abraham, so let's take a look what Abraham and Sarah went through.
They went through a lot. They really did. I mean, I feel for them.
They really went through a lot, I can tell you. So here's what they're going through this now. So imagine this. Don't have any GPS. You don't have any even maps.
Oh, I can hear the fight now. Okay.
So, and you're told to go with a bunch of donkeys and sheep, because that's what he has.
Yeah.
They're herders. Mm-hmm. To a distance of about 800 miles. No, about 1,000 miles. How would you feel?
Oh gosh, I can only put
I would
myself.
laugh.
Yeah, you would
Yeah.
laugh. You would have to laugh. You would have to laugh. I can only put myself in Sarah's shoes, and I would be pretty testy. And there would just be days where, yeah.
Have you have an experience of moving from one place in the world to another to totally unfamiliar to you?
No, but I've been lost on a walk, and that was a lot for me. So I can only imagine what's going on here.
I know for sure that your parents have this experience. Both your parents have this experience, moving from a totally different country to here. And of course, when they've been moving, there was not as developed internet, but it was some, at least TV,
Yeah.
to understand something like this. But I can imagine a level of change. So here is where I'm going with it. Here is Abraham and Sarah. So when we look at this whole story of this, first of all, right away, take a look at Genesis 11:30. About right away, it tells us the problem.
Genesis chapter 11 verse 30 says, "But Sarai was barren, and she had no child."
Okay, so now let's look at Genesis 12:4 to understand the context, why it was so dramatic.
So chapter 12 verse 4 says, "So Abram departed, as the Lord had spoken unto him, and Lot went with him, and Abram was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran.
Okay. So they're childless couple, and Abraham is already 75.
Yeah, but didn't the people back then live a lot longer?
Not so much at this point. God had already taken his spirit from them, so
Okay.
they're not making it that high anymore.
Yeah. Abraham, of course. We're at the point where there was not like 900 years like Adam,
Okay. Yeah.
but they're not like yet in, living till 70 or 80.
Right.
But
Yeah.
Abraham lived until 180. So it's still a
okay.
little.
At least.
Right. So
That's significant. Yeah, girl, where's your faith?
yeah.
Yeah, there was still a lot, but not as much as it used to be. In other words, age 75 for someone who was the son of Adam was probably just less than 10% of the lifespan.
Right.
For Abraham, it's a good, Abraham 75 is as if, he probably was like me in the mid 50s,
Right.
and his wife was in the mid 40s.
Okay. When you put it in that kind of perspective.
In that kind of perspective, I tell you, I know some couples who got pregnant at the age of 48, 49, even 50. Thanks God for American medicine, healthcare, that the pregnancy and the deliveries went uneventful. But with lots of medical supervision. Back then, they even didn't think they could conceive at this age.
Right. So then, it's not hard to imagine that she was worried or, concerned or lacking in faith and things like that. But this, dare I say, meddlesome wife trope, because she's not the only one that kind of tries to dip her hands into things that she really shouldn't, or motivate her husband into doing things that, is not, exactly God's intention or will. Another perfect example, Rebecca. Isn't the whole thing that she pulled with Jacob kind of her whole own plan? Like, that was her evil plot. She did that.
Yeah, that was a little different story with Rebecca and the favoritism between the twins. It was brutal. But going back to Abraham, just in a context of it, what they went through is like, here they end up in this new land. They're childless. By the way, in today's perception, where you guys are at, at your age group, if there is a couple which don't have children after they're lived for 10, 20 years, is there a problem?
Depends on who you are.
Yeah, nowadays, the opinion could be split down the middle.
Yeah, it's probably if not 50-50, 40-60. Like, it's not out of the ordinary for people to not have kids 10 years to a relationship, but that's 10 years into the relationship. Like, if they're not with children like into their 30s, that's not odd. But if they've been together for 10 years, it's, if not 50-50, 40-60. It's not, they're not as passionate as they used to be to have kids these days.
Yeah, back then it was the future. You don't have child, you don't have the future. That's why it's the promise. Remember, don't forget the promise. Take a look at passage, chapter 12, verse 10 through 15.
So 10 verses 10 and 15, it says, "And there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down to Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was so grievous in the land. And it came to pass, when he was come near to enter into Egypt, that he said unto Sarai his wife, Behold now, I know that thou art a fair woman to look upon. Therefore it shall come to pass, when the Egyptians shall see thee, that they shall say, This is his wife, and they will kill me. but they will save thee alive. Say, I pray thee, thou art my sister, that it may be well with me for thy sake, and my soul shall live because of thee. And it came to pass that when Abram was come into Egypt, the Egyptians beheld the woman that she was very fair. The princes also of Pharaoh saw her and commended her before Pharaoh, and the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house.
So,
Yikes.
what do you think their relationship are gonna be after all of this? That he, to save his life, he literally prostituted
Yes.
her into the harem of the Pharaoh.
Yeah.
So that's your sitcom comedy. That's
Yeah.
why she's laughing. Now you get why she's laughing.
Yeah. I didn't think about it like that. Like, I didn't think of it so much as, yeah, here, don't look at me, look at her. But I kind of saw it as that was there. He didn't have a say in it, but now I'm seeing that he kind of had a part to play.
So yeah, of course. And then look, after they come out and she's still childless, she takes Hagar, whom she receives, and does to Abraham the same. Now, you wanted me to sleep with a Pharaoh. Now you sleep with this gal, so that
Yeah.
this is even from the perspective of non-Christian standard, this is horrible, isn't it?
Yeah, it is turning from a comedy to like a drama now.
Yeah, it is. So yeah, that's really a drama. They've been through a lot. They've been through all kinds of who knows what, and that's why she's laughing because after that you want God to bless me. Forget about it. I'm 90.
Yeah, at that point, not just her age, but their overall circumstance.
Yeah, because look, this whole thing with Hagar ended up as a disaster because she eventually, Ishmael could not consider her as his mother. And the whole experiment she planned just fall apart.
So God knew that was going to happen. And I'm sure that's why he kind of kept trying to redirect Abraham's attention back onto himself. Like, okay, well, yes, your circumstance is interesting and there's a lot going on. And, Sarah isn't always happy with you, but just look to me, look to me, look to me. And I think that's a very repetitive, narrative throughout a lot of those marriages. Like, again, with Isaac and Rebecca, she had a lot of pieces that she was trying to move around in their life to make things that she wanted to happen. And with this demonstration of marriage, how you see the wife's important and then the husband's important in demonstrating a union with God, there is the other side of the same coin where we have the harlot now. Not just okay, the faithful good wife. Sure, she has a few kinks, but she's a faithful good wife. And we have this very troublesome, very, she's not even a wife. She's a harlot, type of storyline. So what does that kind of demonstrate for us too? Because I always think back to Hosea, and we've had the conversation about him before, so we don't have to go too deeply into it, but there is a lot to be said for the harlot as well.
Oh yeah. Well, let's refer to this. That's a huge drama. Let's take a look at Hosea chapter 1, and this is how it starts. Really verse 2, and Hosea 1, verse 2 and 3.
The beginning of the word of the Lord by Hosea. And the Lord said to Hosea, Go, take unto thee a wife of whoredoms and children of whoredoms, for the land hath committed great whoredom, departing from the Lord. So he went and took Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, which conceived and bare him a son.
So this is basically an interesting story with an interesting twist in it, because who was this particular Gomer lady? First of all, she was definitely here's her father's name is mentioned. Mm-hmm. In fact, it was interesting that in in chapter 3, God tells him he pays the bride price. Mm-hmm. So it means that their marriage is legal. So he's not just going and takes, and having some kind of, because first of all, it's God telling him, so he goes marries this woman. So it says here in, let's say, Hosea 3, verse 2.
Verse 2 says, "So I bought her to me for 15 pieces of silver, and for an omer of barley, and a half omer of barley."
In other words, this may be, like last lesson, we discussed how important it is to understand a little bit of historical culture. Mm-hmm. If you read today, I acquired a woman for 15 pieces of silver. What are you going to be thinking?
Yeah, that can't be right.
That's going to start a riot.
Yeah, yeah, it's not appropriate.
Well, I can tell you that. That's a little bit different thinking. Mm-hmm. Take a look at Proverbs chapter 31, verse 10.
Who can find a virtuous wife? For her worth is far above rubies.
Yeah. So Hosea was probably not a wealthy man, mm-hmm. and the father of his bride wasn't a wealthy fellow. So the 15 pieces of silver cut. Okay. But, see, her worth is far above the rubies. So in the ancient time, the worth, and we're talking Middle East, you can even see this today, but in the ancient times, the worth of a wife, the more, it's kind of like, wait, I love you so much that I gave that much money to your dad for you. Mm-hmm. This is the kind of thing, like, think about this. Jacob for Rachel, how long did he work?
14
years, mm-hmm. Yeah.
So he paid for her 14 his monthly salaries. So that's the way, I can kind of, it's very strange how it is in the Western culture, in American culture today. But think about this: if you, I read about this, but I've seen it in Jordan. But like Emirates, mm-hmm. right? That's a wealthy country. The local Arabs in Emirates are really, they're filthy rich, right. Because they're all connected through the oil money. So how does a good Arab husband from Emirates show that he loves his wife?
I don't know, do tell.
He takes her to the jewelry store and buys her gold.
Okay.
Right. That's the way they show it. Mm-hmm. He's wealthy, he buys her gold, and stuff like this. So this is how it works. But it's today's, just as you can see, it's a little different mentality. So basically, Hosea is told by God to marry a woman who is most likely, she's not like a employee of a red light district somewhere in Europe, mm-hmm. but she is a priestess of love in the pagan temple.
Okay.
Yeah.
So she is actually, that's why she takes, it says, children of harlotry.
Yes.
So who knows who the father is? She used, she was, offering her body as a part of worship to the, quote unquote, to the deity of fertility. And this is how they, try to pray for rains, this pagan practices. This is why God wanted to eradicate that. And so it didn't happen. So now this, Israelite, Hosea, lives in the area where all these things are happening now in the among the Israelites. And so she's probably from the same village. He knows her parents, but this is her job. As a result of her job, she has a couple kids from this kind of job. And so God says to Hosea, who is definitely a godly man, marry this particular woman, adopt her children. And so he does it officially. But here is what is actually happening. This is drama with, in my opinion, it has a happy end.
Okay, which is a good thing, because I was going to ask too, we're looking at what's happened historically. Okay, we're looking at Genesis and we're bringing it all the way to Hosea with different examples of different kinds of brides. And as we are the bride, and as we're trying to absorb this information and use it to better our relationship with God, how in general,
Yeah, let's keep reading this story. So as we read, let's go Hosea chapter 3. We read verse 15, how he paid the bride price. Now this is what he's telling her. Because God tells him here in verse 3, go and love this woman. So this is what he's telling her. Verse 3.
Hosea chapter 3 verses 3 says, And I said unto her, Thou shalt abide for me many days, thou shalt not play the harlot, and thou shalt not be for another man, so will I also be for thee.
So God says, okay, this woman may be really bad, but this is how I love Israel.
Wow.
So this is like, if you, Hosea, find a way to love this kind of woman, adopt her children, live with her in a marriage, have your own children from this marriage, so this is the same I speak to people. This is how I come and approach people who disowned me. This is how, so this marriage is, as we said at the previous lesson, it was in a way dramatization.
Mm-hmm.
So in this kind of marriage that suddenly she stays with him, she is no longer playing harlot, they turn into a normal family. After that, this is how God wants to shows that he's able to restore the worst sinner to normalcy through the relationship. Take a look at how he interprets this, verse 4 and 5.
Verses 4 and 5 of chapter 3 of Hosea says, For the children of Israel shall abide many days without a king, and without a prince, and without a sacrifice, and without an image, and without an ephod, and without teraphim. Afterward shall the children of Israel return and seek the Lord their God and David their king, and shall fear the Lord and his goodness in the latter days.
Yeah, so the same way as this is a happy end story. So Hosea was able to marry this woman who was worshiping, the goddess of fertility, practicing this harlotry worship and having children, but God says, love her.
Right. So I think now that we've establish that, I can understand why you were so intrigued by the Ezekiel example, because that's reminding me of the dry bones. So even after the dry bones had come to life, they were still like they were hopeless. They were very distraught. Even though they had just been brought back from literal dead, they still had this burden of whatever they were thought they were carrying or whatever. And Ezekiel prophesies to them, and as God tells him to in Ezekiel 37, verse 11, then he said to me, Son of man, these bones are the whole house of Israel. They indeed say, our bones are dry, our hope is lost, and we ourselves are cut off. But when we're relating to God, it's very important for us to understand the tradition and the history of it all. But when God relates to us, he gives us a new history, and he kind of changes all the things that have happened to us the same way that he showed Hosea to do with his wife. And I don't know, I just put those two together as you're kind of describing God's redemptive love through Hosea.
Yes. Yes, that's very important. And here is, I know that many women today who have to earn their living by doing prostitution, they feel hopeless because they know they're not interested in doing this. Many of them are not. But they feel hopeless. Who is going to marry me after that kind of lifestyle? And so I'm pretty sure in that kind of culture, this woman, will there be any father to my children? What am I worth at? Well, so he came. God told him to love, and he went and he loved. And as a result, he demonstrates that even if it's possible with good intention human, how much God is able to restore anyone from huge mess to a normalcy of life and relationship with him.
Amen.
Awesome. So yeah, looking at those different examples of marriages and how God establishes his covenant in demonstration here on earth, we can be reminded of not only his redirecting love in the examples of Abraham and Sarah, but in his redefining love in the example of Hosea and his wife. So thank you all for joining us. Please leave a comment down below of what you've learned and what you're taking away from these stories, this history lesson, this prophecy lesson. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, hit the bell so we don't miss you next time, and we'll see you again. Bye-bye.